and Wealth Radio Network.
If you suffer with diabetes, there's a 25% chance that you'll develop a foot ulcer that can lead to severe health consequences, including amputation. At the sole authority, at little or no cost, you can receive your very own therapeutic shoes and custom inserts. Medicare recipients are entitled to 1 pair of quality diabetic shoes and 3 custom inserts. Call the Sole Authority today, 954-597-7060.
This is Talk 1470.
Talk 1470.
WNN.
The opinions expressed on the following sponsored program are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors.
It's Monday night at 9 p.m. and time for Sex Talk with the Siegel brothers. Dr. Ricky Siegel is a certified sex therapist, educator, and supervisor, and his brother Larry Siegel is a clinical sexologist and certified sexuality educator. The Siegel brothers are here to answer all your questions about sex and sexuality, but we're unsure who to ask, including questions you didn't even know you had. They will also welcome guests from around the globe to talk about a wide variety of topics and issues within the fascinating world of sexuality. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to Sex Talk.
Good evening, and welcome to Sex Talk with the Siegel brothers. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dr. Richard Siegel. I'm a certified sex therapist.
And I'm Larry Siegel, a clinical sexologist and certified sexuality educator.
And my super awesome big brother.
It's, again, my favorite thing to be.
Cheers. Good to
Cheers.
be
Yes,
back
indeed.
here with you again for Sex Talk. This is our weekly conversation where a couple of dudes talk about sexual health issues because sexuality and sexual health are men's issues.
Absolutely.
So we are on the radio in South Florida on 95.3 FM and 1470 AM on WNN. So a license plate really made me laugh out loud. It said WNBC.
Nice.
And our call-in line, if you want to join the conversation, is 888-565-1470. We're also live streaming on Facebook. So if you're there, hello. Thank you for joining us. And please hit the like and share button and get your friends online joining the conversation as we talk about sex.
Absolutely.
And
before we do, I want to just throw something out, just an acknowledgement of this weekend, another series of mass shootings that we have, and just have to ask the question. I mean, when do we get tired of sending our condolences? When do we get tired of thoughts and prayers? When do we say enough? I mean, we are 216 days into 2019, and there have already been 250 mass shootings.
More than there are days in the year.
More than there are days.
It's disgusting.
So when does it become enough?
Well, I heard a new good moniker for McConnell today, because you know how
Moscow Mitch?
No, Moscow Mitch really twisted his panties last week.
Yeah, it really did.
Somebody today called him Massacre Mitch. Maybe that'll stick and
we'll
start
see.
to
We'll
because
see.
really how well, if you have to have a conscience, I guess that answered the question. You have to have a heart, but how do you look people in the face and say, no, I'm not going to vote for these bills that save American lives?
Absolutely.
This is an internal war, right? I mean, look at all this. They refuse to even refer to it as domestic terrorism because that's a loaded, that means those people.
Well, we don't want to be judgmental. I mean, it's insane.
It's an evil mental health. It's an evil man and a mental health issue.
Right.
No, it's a domestic terrorist.
Yeah, exactly.
That does the same thing as a suicide bomber who straps a vest on and
no different.
That's what got Bill Maher in trouble.
Right.
Talking about the fact that they have the cojones to blow themselves up.
And these people are being radicalized, just like the
and the president is stoking it on.
That's where it's coming from. Right.
God,
but you know what? All of this aside,
we need to keep happy thoughts, sexy thoughts.
Before we do,
like Susan
I just
would
need
say.
to put a call out to people of faith and people who claim to be religious, you fundamentalist and evangelical people out there. Anybody that can actually make a proclamation that God and guns go together, How about just put down your gun and pick up your Bible and maybe read it for a change?
Yeah, or hit yourself over the head with it.
Yeah, even better.
And also want to send out our love to Rochelle. And
Yes,
everybody
our dear friend
in
Rochelle, who
Dayton.
could not be here tonight because of that.
Yeah, because it's just madness hit too close to home.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
certainly glad to hear candidates cussing on TV. It's about time somebody got pissed off enough to break through the
We'll see.
stonewalled political correctness.
We'll see if we can break through.
Gets
But I mean,
nowhere.
I
And another
don't think there's a
shout-out.
bigger shame.
Another shout out to my wonderful office group practice partner, Luna Medina Wolf, president of Professionals United for Parkland.
Yes.
And
yes.
there's some hope right there. Those kids, they're going to be running things someday.
Absolutely.
And I bet things will get changing soon enough.
Okay.
So, yeah, on to happier thoughts.
Yes.
Very, very grateful for our pinch hitter tonight. And
Absolutely.
I'm really, really pleased to welcome our guest. Are you on the line with us, Richard?
I am.
There
Hey,
you are.
Richard, how
And,
are you?
I hope we'll get the video connected forthwith. Welcome, Dr. Richard Mills. Richard is a licensed master social worker in New York City. New York City. City so nice they named it twice. And he's also a certified hypnotherapist and a sex therapist. And we're very proud, Rachel and I are very proud to have Dr. Mills studying with us at Modern Sex Therapy Institutes in our New York contingent. And welcome to the show. I hope, are you connecting
Thank you
the
for
video?
having me.
Is it on our end?
I don't know. I'm on the video, but I don't know if it's allowing me to do it. So we can just
We could
just
wrap
go
on the
from
phone. I don't know if our
Yeah, I'm not sure
engineer is.
there. Yeah, it's okay.
To get the
or if
video
it's
going. So
Freddie.
we'll work on that.
Yeah.
See what we can do on this end.
So in the meantime, yeah, that's what radio's for, right? That's why. That's
Right.
why we got these faces.
Exactly.
That's
These are-
right.
These are faces for radio.
TV.
Yeah. So welcome, and again, thanks for jumping in as pinch hitter. But I know we will have way more fascinating things to talk about than we have time on the show, as is always the case. But you said
Right.
something. We spoke earlier today, and he's got to turn on. Turn the camera on.
Richard, is your camera turned on?
I think it is.
That's what our producer's telling us.
Yeah. I think he said the camera. Either you need to be turned on or the camera needs to be turned
Well,
on. One
it's
of
sex talks, and this guy's turned on. Please don't get me started all the time.
Right. I'm on here.
I don't know.
those. Okay. Well,
Technical.
something will work itself out.
Yeah. But we spoke earlier in supervision, and you said something so fascinating that I just said, we've got to talk about that tonight because, you know, Larry and I have been doing this show just over 2 years now. And the theme that emerged just organically through no doing of our own, but for obvious circumstances, that men don't talk about sex. Men struggle with intimacy.
Exactly.
So, you know, this show just evolved that it's emphasizing the idea that sexual health are men's issues. And most of the sexual consequences that make us supposedly the greatest country in the world have such dismally poor sexual health
Yeah.
relate to men's lack of ownership. That, you know, too many people, they hear sexual health and they think Planned Parenthood and women's reproductive and those kinds of issues. And they roll their eyes and go, up, there goes the fun. Right.
Well, we've also talked quite a bit. You know, it's a great word. Unfortunately, the context is not so great. But, you know, this also touches on this idea of men being socialized in a way that we don't really have a vocabulary for our emotions.
And that's what Richard said.
And that term alexithymia, right?
Where do men even have a voice?
Yeah.
You know, I've credited Tammy Nelson a number of times for saying this, that we expect far too much of men in therapy to just come in and start emoting and getting in touch with their feelings like it's so natural for men as it seems to be for so many women. But
Right.
where's that voice? Richard, say more about what we were talking about earlier.
A lot of times as I get further and deeper into this work, one of the things that I've seen and I notice is that men don't really have a space to talk. From the time that especially for men, from the time that they're born, using your voice is not something that we are taught to do as men. And I know I speak of that in general terms, but I see so many men in my office who really they struggle with finding their voice. Tonight I was sitting with a gentleman and he was saying, I feel that my voice is suppressed. And part of it is that, as we look at men in terms of operationalists, and the way that we express ourselves is through these forms of how we can demonstrate our abilities. A lot of times that's really confused with men's sexuality. And so I think one of the things that's really helping, and that's where I think a lot of men will come in and they'll have all these things that are going on, but it's as soon as their penis stops working, they're in my office.
Catastrophe.
And they realize that through that experience, through working, that they understand that it's really nothing about sex and sexuality. It's really about their voice. And I really think that we need to do a better job. And that's where I think practitioners come in, such as myself, really getting, working with men and helping them to develop that voice so that they can then really say what it is that their needs, that they can state their needs, because oftentimes as men, we don't really understand how to state our needs or to believe that if we say it, that our needs will be heard. And so I really think that's the piece of it as we work through with men, is to really help them develop their voice and to provide them a space that is safe.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I would imagine even
it's so
before a lot
rare.
of that, just even this idea of men, for lack of a better phrase, being given permission and just acknowledging the fact that we have needs. And that it's kind of okay to even be someone with needs.
If the message is, that the needs are more like gut instincts that you just have to take and satisfy, then there's no sophistication to develop an emotional vocabulary to talk to somebody and function in a relationship.
To express one's need is a form of weakness.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so then it gets into this whole thing. And that's why we see, I truly believe if we looked at through a sociological point of view, is that's why men are dying of disease earlier than women, because they don't talk about it. And they don't know, they don't even know how to talk about what's going on. When they come into my office, they'll call it the problem.
Right.
My penis isn't working. And to say it's filled with shame because they've not had that ability to talk about what is going on. And I think that's really where we start the dialogue, is to really work with men. And then they have these breakdowns and breakthroughs, and I think that is the piece where they start to understand that they can express their voice, that they don't have to be these passive participants in their life.
Well, they learn the hard way, no pun intended, that their penis is actually speaking louder than they're able to. So, even that language, it doesn't work. It's some power tool in the garage that needs a recharge?
Right, it's very mechanistic.
Yeah. And then, of course, translates to manhood.
And when we're working together, one of the things I say to these guys is to understand that your penis is not the son. The relationship does not revolve around your penis.
Right. Well, I mean, it's one of those.
And they'll go, "Oh my God."
Yeah, exactly. I've spent a lot of my career trying to convince men that they are, especially sexually, more than just a penis.
Whoa.
But we have this penis obsession in terms of how most men are defining their masculinity, their manhood, their sexual prowess, their validation as human beings. It's so penis-centric.
And they think it's about how long they can have sex. And they think that I'll ask them what is, especially as people who really struggle with rapid ejaculation, they'll say, well, I've really improved, But then you'll ask them what they think. They have this idea that it's like a 2-hour marathon.
Yeah, of course. So many times guys diagnose themselves with premature or rapid ejaculation because they can't last longer than 20 minutes. I'm like, dude,
And if
20
you can last
minutes?
20 minutes,
How about
well,
guys who can't go 20 seconds
Right.
without being and humiliated, right? 20 minutes, that's way longer than average.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a lot of this stuff really speaks to, some of the core, some of the most central issues of a lot of the sexual stuff that guys go through. And, it seems most, if not all roads, kind of come back to this idea of intimacy, right? This idea of first understanding and being in touch with their kind of innermost workings, which, again, if they can't do that, obviously they can't express that or share that with somebody else. Right? So it seems like a lot of men are cut off from their own, I think, core beings. So how do we manage that?
Well, that's part of the when men enter and they come into a therapeutic space, they just want to cry. They just want to have a release. And the thing is that I'll see the most manly men in my office and seeing them, and they'll say, I've never been able to do this. I can't do this in front of anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you're just there and you're with them and you feel that because there's not a space and we don't talk about it. And it's really, we talk a lot about trauma, but we don't really think of it as men are sitting in these isolation pods.
Yeah.
And we really have
even
to
socially, it's just there isn't a real there's barriers to intimacy. Even when guys are hanging out, whatever they do to socialize, drinking beer, playing video games, they're not really engaging in the way women do. Generally,
Well, I mean,
using
that's one of those
sexist,
weird differences.
stereotypes.
Sure. I mean, I think women can often, meet each other for the first time, see that I have those same pair of shoes, and they're best friends, and there's real bonding that can take
But
place.
guys can spend 3 days fishing
Right.
and sit in a boat and not have 6 words exchanged.
Or throw me a beer is about all they say to each other, and they'll come back
And
from
it
a
was
shared
a
experience.
deeply bonding
Right.
experience. But is it intimacy, right? Can they say, I'm really struggling in my relationship? Like, whoa, restricted.
Yeah.
We can't go there.
And I think that's one of the greatest barriers with so many men not being able to express these things for themselves, it becomes very difficult for them to hear it from other men as well.
Well, and it's a thing of we don't talk. And so there's not this thing, especially we look at things like the Me Too movement, and it really was, and we should have it, and we should have awareness around sexual assault and abuse. But men don't, one of the things is we don't talk about the assaults that happen to men.
Right.
And there's a lot of men that have grown up, and even sometimes their perpetrators are women, and that's not talked about because it's looked at as, well, sexual assault can only occur if a body part is hurting itself.
Right.
But there's emotional abuse. There's all this other abuse that we don't really talk about that. And it really is. We really need to cultivate this discussion on men's health.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think it has there's again to do with this idea of vulnerability, right? If a man, again, a lot of sexual abuse that is perpetrated on males is perpetrated by women. But men sexually tend to be so opportunistic in their view of sexuality that for a lot of guys, it doesn't really matter even at the age. If a male says they were sexually abused by a woman, the reaction to most men around them is, what are you complaining about?
You're right. But I mean,
I should be so lucky. I've heard that before.
That stupid cliche of like the 13-year-old 7th grader and the hot English teacher, right? But that's different. We've all heard adult men who are abused as children,
Right.
6, 7, 8 years
Right.
old, and they're beating themselves up that I should have been able to, I wasn't man enough to defend myself.
Yep.
Against an adult, are you
Yep.
insane? A 6, 7-year-old child, the message is so ingrained that it's their fault, it's their weakness, they're not macho enough to have...
Well, and
Right.
it's also this piece of, let's say there's arousal that occurred.
Right.
And let's say they were
Right.
Yeah.
That
they were
makes it confusing.
right.
at that stage of puberty and they became aroused. And the thing is that,
Even more
you
confusion.
became aroused.
Yep.
And so if you became aroused, you must have enjoyed it. I mean, we really have to start the conversation. And I think that as we have these conversations, it's really important that we provide men a space so that they can have a space to talk about their, they shouldn't have to come to my office years later because, their life, everything else seems fine, but then their penis, they think my penis stops working. And then once they will stay with me after the symptoms have resolved because they realize that they understand that they have a safe space in which they can process and they don't have to be your typical male.
And that the symptom was just that, a symptom. Not a disease, not something broken, but a sign that they're struggling to get in touch and have that safe space. I mean, how do people talk about desires and fantasies? These are some things that intimate partners who've been together for decades struggle and sometimes get in conflict over bringing up the subject. Sometimes there's a scenario, it's kind of intentionally goofy, but this is a real thing. How does someone bring up, an interest in kink with a partner? Like, hey, babe, I was curious. Did you ever think about, maybe like a threesome or something? No, absolutely not. I'm not. Are you? You better. No, I'm of course not. Oh, no, I wouldn't. I saw something on TV. I was just curious. And now it's like this genie that you'll never get back in the bottle.
Oh, right.
And are you thinking about someone else? And it's just
I'll add to that for a lot of guys
that
the shame of
conversation?
they want to maybe ask their partner to do some kind of anal stimulation or penetration.
Right.
How do they ask for that?
Right.
And how do you
Yes.
put that genie back in the bottle?
right.
Well, it's also like if we look at gay male culture, right? So in gay male culture, you have these apps, right? And you're like, we're gonna see if we're sexually compatible first, and then we'll
Right.
see if we like each other. And
Not so
I
different
think,
than everybody else.
yeah, I mean it's very interesting when we look at like how the world of like specifically gay culture and how it's had to be looking at people's experiences, specifically gay men's experiences, and how the conversations of sex are generally the first things that are talked about.
Right.
Yeah, well, that's I think across the board the script has been flipped. That it used to be people wanted to get to know each other to see if they wanted to have sex with each other. Now people want to have sex with each other to see if they want to get to know them.
But Richard, to your point, is it more about a better ability to negotiate boundaries and who likes what, and if it's top, bottom, kind of like kinky people have a lot to teach vanilla people about this is what's going to go down, this is what we're into, this is what's not. But is it any easier to talk really intimately on that level, on that sexually intimate level, past sex acts?
And if I can throw
Well, I
on
mean,
top of that, Richard, as well,
Right.
the
It's a
difference
whole-
between a same-sex conversation, is it easier for people of the same sex to talk about these, or does the sort of cross-gender dynamic throw a monkey wrench into it?
Well, I think it's like where people in George Chauncey's Gay New York, right? If we look at how people used to cruise, spaces where men would meet would be like in the bathhouses, in the parks, and in the bathrooms. And so these people, gay
It's
men
kind of
would
anonymous.
cruise, and they really didn't have this kind of opportunity to talk about it. And then to talk about it was more so
No,
it was like
all
very
about the act.
situational.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like glory holes and such. Nobody didn't even want to know who the other person was.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then you have, as time went on, we started to see things like Grindr. So, things like the bathhouses and even like the bars. People don't need to be in the bars to meet another person. You can just flip on your Grindr or your Scruff, and you can kind of look and say,
so waiting in the bathroom.
This person likes what they're a top or they're a bottom, and they like what I like them, and we're going to have sex. And then, but I do think, as we looking at gay culture and men's culture within gay culture, I think it goes back to it's the same thing. If we look at lesbian culture, there is more, and maybe I'm generalizing a bit, but there is more ability to have conversations about the interest versus the sex.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we had our dear friend Michelle O'Mara talk about, reinforcing those cliches, the stereotypes about what a lesbian brings to a second date.
Yeah.
Right? A U-Haul.
Right.
Just they're shacking up and moving in. Different kind of intense intimacy. But yeah, I think most guys, straight or gay, really have to get past the act-centered idea of sex and more of the, you're supposed to be doing something with a partner, not to or in or on a partner. Mm-hmm. Whatever it is you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Mm-hmm. But
it's okay to do it to or on as long as that's also part of the understanding.
Yeah, that requires nice. Well done. Good. 2 point. That was a 3-pointer. But it requires that nakedness, that emotional, not the literal close-off nakedness that's really easy in the dark with a good buzz on, but the emotional vulnerability to say, this is what I like, this is what I don't. What do you like? Does this feel good? Right? Not this. Well, it worked for the last one, so it's bound to work for this one. Or they're broken, or worse yet, oh my God, I'm broken.
Right, and that's one of the big disconnects.
Where does that start? I think that's the huger question. Is like where is this where does this need to start? Where is it not starting, and where do we need to start it?
Well, young, right?
Well,
Young. Before guys start getting horny, they need to understand about relationships and intimate relationships and sexual intimacy, not seeing other people as ways to get your rocks off.
Right. And I'd say starting young, I like that idea of space. We don't
Safe
often
space.
think of giving space to men to be men. Right? There's again, all the assumptions and expectations and things that we're all supposed to be living up to.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we get so caught up in performance and what we do. And again, sex is, it's what we are. It's not what we do. But we're so performance-oriented. People are so goal-oriented when they go into sexual situations.
There's detachment.
Right.
I'm afraid we're going to run out of time in a couple of minutes. But, there's a reason why every treatment center... Every treatment center everywhere has those ridiculous little posters with the cartoon faces that says, how am I feeling today?
Right.
Right? Because men, especially men with addiction problems, once you get past sad and angry, that's about it.
Well, and that goes back to that alexithymia and what we see behind domestic violence and intimate partner violence and all of that stuff.
We got the 1-minute warning?
Yes.
So, as you can see on the screen, if you're looking at us on Facebook, you can find Richard in Manhattan at richardmillstherapy.com. And he's a gifted therapist. As far as we're concerned, thank you so much for joining us. Really good to talk to you.
It's really been great to talk to you.
And my brother Larry and I will be here next Monday and every Monday at 9 o'clock for a Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers.
That's it. Thanks for watching and listening. Well, not much to watch, but...
You've been listening to Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. Join us every Monday night at 9 p.m. on WNN, 1470 AM and 95.3 FM. Or watch live streaming video at AMP2 TV Productions on Facebook or look for the shows on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you'll join us again next week.
The opinions expressed on the preceding